Hello, and welcome to Scratch Paper, a writing-related podcast. This is episode 7, and I'm Alicia De Los Reyes. This week, we're going to talk about drafting, which is, we are fourth in a series about starting to write a novel. The very first episode in the series is episode 4, so you can go back there if you want to listen to the whole thing. In episode 4, we talk about getting ideas from place. And then in episode 5, we talk about other ways to get ideas. Episode 6, the last episode, was about outlining versus pantsing, or kind of just writing by the seat of your pants, writing without an outline. And now in episode 7, we're going to talk about drafting, the actual writing part. So, should be good, hopefully. First, I'm going to give you a writing and reading update. Writing, I've been revising Finding Lucy, which I will continue to do for some time. I've revised 3 chapters now. I'm feeling really good about it. Takeaway that I have from doing some work is the latest chapter that I revised. I had to revise twice because I was just trying to muscle through it the first time, and I definitely remember thinking, I'm just going to muscle through it. I'm just going to push, because I had some extra time and I wanted to get it done. And thinking about it later, I really didn't enjoy it, and I didn't like how it turned out. And I realized it's because I wasn't writing in my character's head. I was kind of in my own head. So it's interesting to think about, would I have figured that out if I had done it more right the first time, or I don't know. Anyway, revising is a strange process. Reading. I've been reading still the Passing Bells trilogy, but I have not been enjoying it as much. The first one was definitely the best, the Passing Bells. That's the first one in the Passing Bells trilogy. This last one, A Future Arrived, now is taking place the Depression is about to happen. And it's just not as exciting and dramatic as the first one. The second one had the same problem. I feel like we're just tying up loose ends for the characters as opposed to getting kind of embroiled in their dramatic lives. So with reservations, I recommend it because I do enjoy the writing a lot, and I really like how the narrator jumps into different characters' heads, especially the Earl of Stanmore, because he's so old-fashioned and very interesting to read about. Okay, so let's get into the lesson. So like I said, we're going to talk about drafting. Drafting is the actual writing of your novel, and it can be really intimidating to some people. So I think having an outline helps get over that intimidation, because when you get stuck, you can go back to your outline. But even if you have an outline, it's still a really big task. Even if you know what you're going to write, it's still a really big task to actually write those words. If you think about how long a novel is supposed to be, according to my agent and other people, it's supposed to be 60,000 words. So that's a lot of words. And even if you're a really fast writer, it's going to take a while. So here are some resources I'd like to recommend if you're getting down and feeling like you can't go on or can't get started, which is where a lot of people end up, I think. And they just have this idea and they never put pen to paper, which is a real shame. So if you're having the trouble of actually sitting down to write, I recommend Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. She's a fairly well-known writer who writes kind of spiritual-ish memoirs and other books. Her most well-known book is definitely this one, Bird by Bird, and there's a chapter called Shitty First Drafts that's pretty famous, and I actually used it when I was teaching in grad school at UNH. I had an anthology there that I used with the students, and they had this essay in the anthology, but it was called Crummy First Drafts, which I always thought was funny. So highly recommend Shitty First Drafts. She will just kind of tell you to sit down and do it, which is sometimes what you need. Another book is On Writing by Stephen King, which I really like. It's really concrete and down to earth, and it's a lot less kind of ethereal or woo-woo than Anne Lamott can sometimes be. He is very practical. One thing that I've gotten from that book is to just give yourself a word limit and try and meet it every time you write. So he says, sit down and write 2,000 words a day. He says to do that. and I think it's 2,000. I don't have time to write every day, and I can't get to 2,000 words, but when I do sit down, I try and have a word count in mind. So like 1,000 or 500, 1,200, whatever it will be. And I think that's really helpful because it also helps you know when to stop, which is good. Another essay is The Getaway Car by Ann Patchett. It's a really long essay. It's really good. I love Ann Patchett. She's one of my favorite authors, and I love the way she writes, and I like the advice that she gives in The Getaway Car. Also very practical, down to earth. So I tend to gravitate towards authors who are practical in their writing advice. So when I have trouble writing, here are some things that work for me. One, which I've mentioned before, is to set a time limit. So especially with revising, this has been a good thing for me because I just will sometimes get overwhelmed with the enormity of the task. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to write for 20 minutes and then I will stop. And sometimes I just only have 20 minutes, so it's good. I have to stop. It means that there's like definitely an end point, which is good. It's encouraging. You know, you won't have to keep going forever. Another kind of related thing that I use is the Pomodoro method, which is you write for 25 minutes and then you take a break for 5. And if you go online, there are plenty of Pomodoro timers. Like it will just, you can go to Tomato Timer, I think it's tomatotimer.com, and you can hit the start button and it will show 25 minutes and it will take up the whole screen, the whole web browser, so that whenever you go back to your web browser, you'll see how much time you have left. And that is good because I like seeing like, oh, I've written for 10 minutes. I still have 15 minutes left. That's not very long. I can certainly write for 15 minutes. So I really like using a timer. It works well for me. I have to say I don't time my breaks because I used to be a tutor and I only ever had 10-minute breaks and it kind of like rattled me. So now I just, take a little break and then go back to writing. Another thing that works for me is one I just mentioned is setting a word goal. So 500 words, 1,000 words. It doesn't have to be huge, but I feel like 500 or 1,000 words I feel good about. 2,000 words is awesome, especially if you're drafting. But for me right now, revising, it takes like, I need to only be writing 1,000 words. Other things, send it to somebody else to read. So like one thing the way that I finished Finding Lucy actually was to set up this exchange with a person I had met at a writing meetup. And I said, okay, how about we do this? Every 2 weeks, I'll send you something. On the alternate weeks, you send me something. And we had I think it was a word limit of 1,500 words, something like that. So every 2 weeks I had to come up with 1,500 words to send to her. And I mean, I was working at the time, but writing was what I was focusing on, and it worked. It got me to actually write. Those deadlines are sometimes the only thing that gets me to write, even when I'm supposed to be writing more. So yeah, try asking somebody to just be your accountability partner or your writing friend. And we were commenting on each other's work, but really it was really encouraging. We were saying things like, I like where this is going. I like this and this and this. We would sometimes ask questions like, I wonder about this. There's this thing that looks like maybe a hole in the story to me. Is that going to get explained later? So, yeah, you can even comment, but be encouraging. And that way you don't have to be scared of your reader. It's also exciting to have somebody read your work, especially if you're in the middle of it and nobody's read it yet. Another thing to keep in mind is even though the task is really big, it's something that you like to do. So you don't have to feel bogged down in it. You can also kind of enjoy it, right? People take on big projects. I mentioned that in a kind of earlier pep talk on this podcast that the bigger projects that you take on, they're worthwhile even though they take a long time. So if you think about your projects in other realms, like I mentioned a really big knitting or sewing project, you can think back on those and get encouragement from those too. Another piece of advice that has helped me get unstuck many times is to write the next thing that happens. So sometimes I'll be writing and I'll think okay, so this character is going to, in my fun novel that I'm working on for fun, just whenever I feel like it. She inherits a yarn shop, right? And then blah, blah, blah. And then she gets in trouble with her client at her current job. And the blah blah will get me stuck. I'll be like, well, what's supposed to happen in between like these two events that I have written down? And then nothing has to happen in between. You could just go to the exciting part. You can always come back later and say, oh, well, something else needs to happen here. It doesn't quite make sense, or, this could use filling out, but yeah, just go to the next thing. So if you don't know what to write, try thinking like, is there something you plan to write? Just go ahead and write that. Yeah, so I would love to hear how you, if you have any resources to share about encouragement for while you're drafting, or if you have any like techniques that work for you, like the Pomodoro technique works really well for me. And please feel free to share in the show notes. They are at aliciadelosreyes.com, ALICIAD as in dog, EL as in llama, OSREYES.com. And I look forward to hearing from you. Next week, we're going to talk about research, and then I think we'll be done with the getting started writing a novel. I would love to hear if there's other things that you'd like to hear about, other questions that you have. So yeah, please do head over to the website and comment, and I will see you next week.